All right, welcome in everybody. The lawyer you know is back. For those of you who haven't been with us for as long of the ride, my name's Peter Tragos. I am a personal injury and criminal defense lawyer in the Tampa Bay area in the state of Florida. And we started this channel to try and be a resource to people that might not know a lawyer if they have questions, if they want to kind of talk through cases or what's going on in cases like the Gabby Petito case, like the R. Kelly trial, Ronnie O'Neill, Elizabeth Holmes. We're going through a lot of cases that are in the news now. We break them down, we give you a lawyer's perspective, and we answer your questions as if a lawyer is sitting there on the couch with you or just a phone call, text, or email away. That's kind of the purpose of the channel, and that's who I am. And this week is kind of a packed week. We have a lot of Gabby Petito content because stuff just seems to be happening every single day, fast and furious. So we'll continue to update that. I'm actually at a conference this week, so most of the videos will be lives, and they'll be whenever I have some time around some of the continuing education courses. I happen to be in the backyard of where the Laundrie's house was searched by law enforcement just recently here in the Sarasota area. So it's kind of crazy to be here all at the same time. And the whole thing that's going on with Gabby Petito, we've continued to talk through it. And if you guys have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We're going to talk through the 911 call. We're going to talk through the police report and just specifically about what that looks like, what law enforcement knows or doesn't know when they show up to a scene of a potential domestic violence. So we're going to go through all that, but make sure you subscribe to our page. And make sure you like this video if you like the Gabby Petito content, because we'll keep focusing on it. But this week's kind of a big week. We're doing some Gabby Petito lives. We have an Elizabeth Holmes trial update that my partner Pete Sardis is going to do. I think it's coming out tomorrow. And then Thursday, we're going to do another R. Kelly live. We're going to update what's going on in that trial, answer a lot of questions with that trial. And I'm thinking about getting with Pete and doing a combo live where we talk about Gabby Petito and Elizabeth Holmes, take the question, get the crossover in the audience that likes that kind of a content. So just let me know if you guys would be interested in that, and we'll try to set something like that up where me and Pete both go live at the same time and answer your questions and kind of go through everything in those two cases. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you like. But for now, so that's Wednesday, that's Thursday. Then Friday, we're doing a gift card giveaway. I think we're giving away a $50 Amazon gift card. And we're going to be posting on our Instagram and on our Facebook and Twitter and in our YouTube community on how you can enter to win that gift card. It's the last giveaway in our 1-year birthday celebration that we're doing. So make sure you follow us on Instagram at Tragos Law and Facebook, Tragos Artists and Tragos. And you can find us everywhere basically under the Tragos Law moniker. So you can find out how to win that gift card. And I think we're only giving away one. So you can be that one lucky winner. And I'm going to eventually get to all of the questions in the chat. But the chat kind of bounces around and I'm scrolling through. So if I don't see your question, I apologize. I'm trying to get to all of them. I know the super chat ones or whatever get highlighted. So I usually get to those. I'll try to get to as many questions as I can, as we always do. But let's talk about the 911 call. Okay. So most of us that are following the Gabby Petito story know that they showed up, that law enforcement showed up to a domestic violence report between Gabby and Brian. And most people know that Brian had scratches on his face. And we've talked through this before. And most of us thought Gabby was the aggressor, Brian was the victim. And, that kind of threw some wrenches in the story that, Brian murdered her and left her there. He was an abusive boyfriend. A lot of people were like, wow. It's really eye-opening when you see that the female is the aggressor in this situation. A lot of dialogue around that in the court of public opinion, on social media, on YouTube, in our chats, things like that. We're going off what we know, right? And that seemed to be the facts in the case. However, we posted on our Instagram on our story. Hopefully you guys saw that. If not, we'll put the link in the description of this video after we're done. The 911 call stated that they were in a white van with a Florida plate, clearly Gabby and Brian. And Brian, the guy calling, I think his name was Chris, said that the male was slapping the female around. And the male hit the female, and that's why he was calling the cops to report a domestic violence issue. They got in the car and drove off after the male was seen striking the female. The 911 operator confirmed that with him, and he said, yes, the male was striking the female. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's exactly what happened. Doesn't mean it's true or not true. What's important is when a 911 call comes like that, law enforcement is alerted to go to the scene, and they are told what the 911 report was. So they show up on scene, and in their head, it should be, the male has struck the female. Now let's figure out what's going on. Let's talk to him. Right? And a lot of us have seen that body cam footage. We put the body cam footage, I think, on one of our other YouTube videos. And again, you can find that, and we'll post a link to that below. Again, I'm at a conference, so I don't have my computer, so I can't share my screen. But I'm going to read through this police report, okay? And then we're going to just discuss what law enforcement saw, what they did, what their report was, and whether or not we agree with it, and how it kind of may have had an effect on everything else that happened after it. All right, on 8/12/21, MCPD officers were dispatched to a report of a domestic problem that had taken place near Moonflower Co-op. It appeared that a male and female had left the scene traveling north on Main in a white Ford Transit van with a black ladder on the rear after the male and female had engaged in some sort. As I heard Officer Robbins tell dispatch, he'd located the suspect vehicle near the turn to Arches National Park, and I'd heard him state upon initiating a traffic stop, he had observed the vehicle leave its lane and strike the curb before stopping near the entrance to the park. Okay, so that was the first officer, what he reported, and he said it was reported to him that the male struck the female. It's really important how stuff comes in because that can shape the entire investigation. We've seen sometimes where law enforcement shows up and ends up shooting somebody at a scene. A lot of that has to do with the 911 call because they know they're showing up to a violent situation or not. And we can kind of see, why did they act that way? It wasn't even supposed to be a violent situation, or they knew they were coming into chaos. So the 911 report is really important as far as what law enforcement does when they show up on scene. Here's another officer, Eric Pratt. I arrived on scene and observed as 2 park officers also arrived. I assisted Officer Robbins with his investigation until I was called away to a report of an intoxicated male near MRH. Okay. I spoke with the male driver of the van, the female passenger, and also called Chris to get more information from him. All 3 individuals gave me a similar and consistent story, consisting of the basic idea that the driver of the van, a male, Brian, had some sort of argument with the female, Gabby, as I recall. The male tried to create distance by telling Gabby to go take a walk to calm down. She didn't want to be separated from the male and began slapping him. Doesn't really make sense, but okay. He grabbed her face and pushed her back as she pressed upon him and the van. He tried to lock her out and succeeded, except for his driver's door. She opened that and forced her way over him and into the vehicle before it drove off. No one reported that the male struck the female. What do you mean no one reported? That's what the 911 call says, and that's what Chris stated earlier. Both the male and the female reported they are in love and engaged to be married and desperately didn't wish to see anyone charged with a crime. There were no significant injuries reported. Both agreed that Gabby suffers from serious anxiety, etc. It appeared that this incident was more accurately categorized as a mental/emotional health break than a domestic assault. I had to leave, but I understand that Officer Robbins got the male lodging through Sea Haven. Gabby retained possession of the van because, in fact, it's her van, and they agreed to separate for the night. No charges were filed, and no one wished for charges to be filed or for the separation to take place, although that was at minimum what Officer Robbins required in lieu of making a case against Gabby for domestic assault. Okay? Gabby is a 22-year-old female who's approximately 5'2" to 5'4" and 110 or 20 pounds, while her fiance is a older, taller, and much heavier than her. He had no fear for his safety and did not exhibit any indicators that he may be a victim of quote-unquote battered boyfriend syndrome, etc. He was assessed to be at low risk of danger or harm as a result of his proximity to his fiancee, Gabby. Nothing further. So he states their sizes to show that Brian didn't have anything to be worried about because Gabby was so small and he was so much bigger than her, and he didn't seem to be exhibiting battered boyfriend syndrome. I've seen a lot of the investigators online, love him or hate him, say she was exhibiting battered girlfriend syndrome, apologizing when she was potentially the victim in the assault when the 911 caller said he was striking her. So it's interesting that there's no indication that he even considered battered girlfriend syndrome, but he did consider battered boyfriend syndrome. All right, let's see what Officer Robbins said, who was the main investigating officer. I responded to a possible domestic violence in progress call. A van with both a male and female as occupants was reported leaving the area of 39 East 100 North northbound on Main Street. One of the witnesses described the vehicle as a white Ford Transit van and a black ladder in the rear Florida license plate. Witness Christopher Blank reported seeing a male later identified as Brian Laundrie and a female later identified as Gabrielle Petito arguing over a phone. Get more details here. Christopher stated that when Brian got into the van, he saw what appeared to him as Gabby hitting Brian in the arm and then climbing through the driver's side window as Brian had locked her out and she was trying to find a way in. So it seems like Chris's story has completely changed from the 911 call, which we all heard on our Instagram. If you heard it there, and I told you, it said the male was striking the female. That's what the 911 call. There's no discrepancy there. I located the white van that matched the description on North Main Street. After I crossed the bridge, I was able to catch up to the van and turn off to Arches National Park. I confirmed the vehicle's license plate at the stop. I followed the vehicle, continued toward the entrance of the gate. I noted the van traveling approximately 45 miles an hour in the 15 mile per hour speed zone. So he's going triple the speed limit, and nothing else really even talked about there. After I activated my lights to initiate the stop, I watched the van cross the double yellow dividing line in lane 1, merge into lane 2, and abruptly swerve to the right. When the vehicle swerved, both the front and rear passenger side wheels hit the curb a short distance before the entrance gate. The vehicle came to a stop. Okay. I approached the vehicle and saw the only occupants being Gabrielle and Brian. Gabrielle, who was in the passenger seat, was crying uncontrollably. A lot of adverbs and adjectives used here. I asked Gabrielle to get out of the vehicle to speak with me. Gabrielle told me she suffers from blank. It's redacted, but it's some kind of anxiety or mental health issue with blank. She continued, because of her blank and blank, combined with the little arguments she and Brian had been having that day, she was struggling with her mental health, which led to the incident that was reported to law enforcement. Gabrielle stated that when she saw my lights, she hit Brian on the arm to get his attention, which caused him to hit the curb as I was following them. I asked Gabrielle if her intention was to hurt Brian, and her response was that she did not intend to hurt him, but rather get his attention to notice me as I was behind them with my lights on. At no point in my investigation did Gabby stop crying, breathing heavily, or compose a sentence without needing to wipe away tears, wipe her nose, or rub her knees with her hands. After I sat Gabrielle in the backseat of my car, I asked Brian to step out of the vehicle and speak with me. He told me they both suffer from blank, and although Gabby's blank is much more advanced than his, issues between the two had been building over the last few days. This, in turn, caused them to argue more than usual. Brian told me neither he nor Gabrielle take medication for their blank, mental health issue, anxiety, whatever it may be. Brian explained he and Gabrielle have been traveling together for the last 4 or 5 months. The time spent created emotional strain between them and increased the number of arguments. All this can be used against Brian if he's prosecuted in her murder, if it gets there, if it's a crime, if it's a murder. All of these statements can be used against him, whether he pleads the fifth or not. While arguing near Main Street, he had attempted to separate from her so they could both calm their emotions. Again, he is continuously trying to separate from her, which is a common theme. He got into their van, not her van, and Gabrielle had gone into a manic state. Brian said Gabrielle, thinking he was going to leave her in Moab without a ride, went to slap him. So she was already worried he was going to leave her stranded way back when. As Gabrielle started to swing, Brian pushed her away to avoid the slap. As a result, Gabrielle off balance, but still caught Brian's face with some of her fingers, causing some minor visible scratches. Brian continued that when he had seen my lights, he thought Gabrielle had grabbed the wheel of the van and pulled it, causing the van to hit the curb. I observed some small scratches to Brian's right arm. When I asked him about them, and he supposed that they must have happened when Gabrielle was trying to get his attention about me being behind them with my lights on. This, however, was not consistent with Gabrielle's statement. I thought that's exactly what she said in her statement, further suggesting her confused and emotional state. That's how he describes Gabrielle. After evaluating the totality of the circumstances, I do not believe the situation escalated to the level of a domestic assault as much as that of a mental health crisis. I then determined the most appropriate course of action would be to separate the parties for the night so they could reset their mental states without interference from one another. And although they did express a desire to remain together, they both ultimately agreed to separate until the following day. Accordingly, I was able to contact Safe Haven to get Brian a hotel room for the night. I instructed both Brian and Gabrielle to take advantage of the time apart to relax their emotion and regain control of their anxiety. I also asked them to avoid contacting each other until the next morning, if at all possible. Gabrielle maintained possession of the van, because in fact it's her van, while I transported Brian to the hotel. They did both have their own personal cell phones. After around 1900 hours, I went to blank, where witness Christopher Blank lived, and had him fill out a statement form. Chris told me Chris is the witness who on the 911 call said the male struck the female, was not entirely sure what it is he had seen, but feared the worst, which is why he came forward as a witness and agreed to complete the written statement. And that's the end of the police report. Really strange, right? How there's these inconsistencies and these certain things that don't make sense about what law enforcement did. It seemed like they were trying to protect Gabby in one sense. They didn't want to arrest her for domestic violence, so they said it was a mental health issue, but then not protecting her in the other sense, where they just assumed and were locked in on the fact that Brian was the victim and she was the aggressor. So I'm not really sure, based on how the 911 call came in and her hysteria, why they would automatically assume that she was the aggressor. I get that he had the scratches on her, but he admitted putting hands on her as well. So it at least seemed like mutual combat. I'm really not sure, and then you see the body cam footage, you see her being hysterical, you see him being pretty calm. I think it is important that this police report and this body cam footage will be used in the murder investigation. If there is a murder investigation, I should say, if they find criminal activity, if they prosecute Brian, you better believe they're going to use his statements that you can see on the body cam footage and in this police report to, if nothing else, secure and try to prove motive. Why did he do it? Because they were angry, because they were fighting, because she scratched him, because she hit him, because he was mad, because they had been together too many days in a row over these months that they've been traveling together and it was boiling up, because of their anxiety, whatever it may be. You can see how this may be used against him in the future. So today, I want to kind of just talk through what you guys think about how the inconsistency with the 911 tape and the police report, what you would think as jurors potentially, and what questions you would have for law enforcement about why they did what they did and how it can affect the case going forward. Okay, so I'm going to get into the chat now and try to get as many questions, like I said, as I can in the chat, talk through them together, give you my perspective about how it's been handled and how I've seen law enforcement handle it, how it's handled on the prosecutor side, on the defense side, how they might use this stuff. But I want to hear from you guys of, does this make you question anything? Does this make you think one way or the other? And I'm not trying to get into conspiracy theories, and I'm definitely not trying to say Brian's guilty, because in our country, he's presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. He is cloaked with that presumption of innocence. I had some lawyers post on my Facebook page today like, hey, Pete, you got to go on and talk about and teach these people about the presumption of innocence in our country. And that still rings true even with Brian, no matter what the circumstances may hold. And that police report was sent to me from a friend on Instagram. Emily Pillar sent it to us saying, this doesn't make much sense. She seems like a prototypical battered girlfriend, not the other way around. They're just blaming it on mental health crisis. Why was this not taken more seriously, with questions like that? So let's talk through it together. I'm going to get in the chat now and scroll up. All right. So this was interesting. So Ambitious Gamer. I saw a headline about this. I didn't see too much around it, but do you have any idea why the lawyer for the Laundrie family would cancel the press conference after talking with the FBI? Okay. And the key phrase there is after speaking with the FBI, because that's how it was reported. He was going to do this press conference. We don't know what he was going to say, but after speaking with the FBI, he canceled it. So to me, that means the FBI is probably trying to work with this lawyer and potentially work with the Laundrie family and the Laundrie parents. And he doesn't want his press conference to do something to mess up what's going on in either the investigation or how the media or the public is providing them tips, because they've been asking for a lot of tips, and people can laugh at TikTokers and can laugh at like these people that are doing stuff on social media, but it seems like they're providing tips. There was just somebody posting that they think their trail camera, which I think is like a security camera either around their house or their land, picked up what looked like Brian Laundrie and have given it to law enforcement. Right? I can just see the movies that are going to start using this in our time, and how to catch murderers in the TikTok era. But I think it had something to do with the fact that the FBI did not want this press conference to have an effect on the media and on the public, and how they may be helping or may hurt the investigation if he were to do this press conference. So only time will tell, and we don't know. So my thing is, it's in my point of view, it's one of two things. Either the FBI is working with this lawyer and wants to work with him off the record, or number two, he doesn't want him to affect the way the media or public is helping or may potentially hurt this case. All right. Yeah, so Susie, Laundrie has been identified as on a game cam. I think they said like a trail cam game. I think it's something with hunting, but I'm not a hunter, so I don't know. In Baker, Florida, in the Panhandle, his hair has grown out and he's carrying the backpack he's known to carry. Okay. So, I mean, this stuff's happening like through social media, through the public. It's happening that way. And I think that kind of has a connection to why the FBI might be involved in what the Laundrie lawyer is saying to the press. All right. Any other questions here? Yeah. So Tina Shea, all domestic violence offenders claim they didn't mean to hurt. Yeah, that was a weird question. Like after they said, "Oh, we don't want anybody to get arrested. Don't prosecute anybody. We don't want anybody to get arrested." And then they ask, "Well, did you mean to hurt him?" Obviously, the answer is going to be no. They have to document their report properly, so I get that. It was the whole police report is weird. I have read so many less aggressive domestic violence situations where they end up making an arrest and they say, "Sorry, we got to make an arrest." And I mean, usually it's the male that gets arrested, but this one, they just seemed to go so easy on him. And it just seems so strange that this turned into what it was and what it is now. It is weird that they just took everything face value, even after an independent witness saying they saw the male putting hands on the female. I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, so bunny bubs. The overuse of the words OCD, anxiety, ADHD is commonplace. Everyone self-diagnoses. It's called the toxic relationship with stress. So I don't know if they have a toxic relationship, but I do think that like my generation and younger, mid 30s and younger, so many people were diagnosed with ADHD or OCD or anxiety, right? And while a lot of people do suffer with those things, calling this a mental break, if either one or both of them were putting hands on each other, I think is not the way the law is supposed to work. They don't say if you're anxious or if you have ADHD that you can hit your girlfriend or scratch your boyfriend's face. It's not how it works. So I do think there are some issues with this. All right. All right. Any other questions here? I'm scrolling through the chat. All right, here we go. Olivia Lamb. Is there any way law enforcement could have obtained a warrant sooner? A week ago, wasn't the info available? I think she seems more than enough to establish probable cause. I have a hard time believing a judge wouldn't have signed off on that. So go check out some of our other videos. We talked a lot about this and a lot about how law enforcement clearly said it was a missing persons investigation. And Brian was a person of interest who may have information, but not the suspect in a crime. There was absolutely not enough evidence. There really doesn't seem to be enough evidence right now for probable cause to arrest him unless there's something with the body that we don't know, right? If there is some kind of criminal nature with the way that she died, or even under some, unexplainable circumstances, then it may tumble into criminal prosecution. And it seems as if they obviously got a warrant to search the house. So a week ago or weeks ago or whatever we were saying when he was here and we didn't know what happened to her body, definitely not enough evidence for a probable cause affidavit, in my opinion. Legally speaking, I would have fought that as a criminal defense lawyer, saying there's no way you should be investigating this guy. There's no way you can arrest him, hold him here, violate his constitutional rights when you have no evidence that he committed a crime. The fact that he's the last person to see somebody alive, if you arrested every person that was the last person to see somebody alive, there'd be all sorts of innocent people sitting in jail. So Rory Hearn said the cops dropped the ball. WTF. What do you mean, Rory? And does anybody else agree with Rory or disagree that the cops dropped the ball in this situation? If you think they did, let me know how you think they did and let's discuss it. Thank you, Sylvia. So Elizabeth, those will be correctly called defensive wounds if when there's a trial. I assume you mean on Brian's face. So you think that they'll be called defensive wounds, meaning he was slapping her and she was trying to get him away from her. So the other way around, flipped than what law enforcement said. But the prosecutors who are going to work with law enforcement are going to have to deal with this police report as it is written. And this police report can be used to impeach law enforcement that testifies at a potential criminal trial in this case. So if Brian uses the self-defense defense and says she came after me again, I pushed her, she fell, hit her head and died or whatever, we still don't know, at least maybe it's happening right now, I don't know how she died or what the body is showing. But I mean, I don't know. I definitely think this police report and this body cam footage, and this is going to be a huge part of the criminal investigation if there is one. Yes, Jennifer, thank you. Everybody hit the like button. If you're not already subscribed, which like 85%, I keep saying it, which is higher. It used to be 95%. So we're getting closer. But 85% of the people that watch are not subscribed. So hit the subscribe button. All right. So Dom K, law enforcement handled it very wrong. What should they have done? That's my question for you. What should they have done? What would be fair? Because you can't just say just for this situation, right? Law enforcement has to have a set of procedures they're supposed to follow. So whatever you say should have happened in this situation, we need to apply it to all domestic violence situations. Bunny Bubs, they were both in the wrong. They should have ended it. She could go on with the channel. He wasn't into it like Chris Watts. So more people saying law enforcement dropped the ball on this case. Justice for Gabby. So yes, so Sylvia, this is a great point. Okay. And I'm glad you pointed it out because it's important for jurors to think through stuff like this. And lawyers will ask, use your common sense. Okay. And it's funny because both lawyers will tell jurors, use your common sense. What they mean is agree with me. I'm making more sense. But a lawyer will ask, and this will be the prosecutor most likely, use your common sense. What's more likely to be accurate? If I'm on the phone with 911 telling you what I'm seeing right now, or if it's hours later and you come to my house and law enforcement comes to my house and says, hey, this is what they said happened. Are you sure you saw what you saw? And you as the witness say something like, yeah, I'm not really sure what I saw. Sure, it could have been him pushing her away and, she was scratching him. Oh, he had scratches on his face. You don't know what law enforcement told to this witness. But if I'm the prosecutor, that's the way I would go, is I would say the 911 call is more accurate because it happened contemporaneously, is what we say. At the same time, he was witnessing it, he was also telling 911. So Sabrina Holmes, my question for you is, since his parents are not persons of interest / suspects in this case, they don't have any protection or legal right not to speak to the police, do they? Technically not correct, right? And I had a question on this on one of the other videos I typed in the comment, because a lot of people think this way. We have had tons of cases where witnesses plead the fifth, and you would think that doesn't make any sense. But if they know something, if they hid evidence, if they harbored a fugitive, like some people said, which they didn't technically, if they did anything to aid or abet a criminal after the fact, whatever it may be, if they gave him money, if they're worried that something they say could potentially incriminate themselves, they have the absolute constitutional right to plead the fifth and not answer questions. They can answer some questions and not others. They can work with law enforcement. Law enforcement give them immunity if they want it. They still have to agree to it. Do they want to rat out their son? There are other laws that protect certain things parents can keep from telling about their kids. So they actually can plead the fifth to certain questions and are not forced to actually give information. I don't know whether or not they're doing that, but they would still have the Fifth Amendment. So Min G, what proof is needed in this case to send Brian to jail? Proof beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed this murder. All right, interesting take as well. Denise W. Brian had the marks on him, but Gabby was young and attractive, so no arrest. That is definitely a view. Okay, I don't know if it's true or false. It's definitely a view, and I will tell you, I would guess if Gabby had the scratches on her face, Brian would have been arrested. But I'm very surprised that the 911 call came in. I'll keep repeating it, that the male was striking the female and no arrest was made. So Sabrina just answered this one a second ago. Again, I'm probably behind in the chat, but I'm trying to get there. So this is interesting. Ambitious Gamer, I did not see this, that grizzly tracks were being found near the body. How does that affect the investigation? I have no idea. We'll need more information about it. And if she obviously died from bear attack type wounds, then that could exonerate him, or at least create enough reasonable doubt to where they're not going to charge him or he would win at trial. But I haven't seen that yet. So the FBI, so Elizabeth is saying, by the way, the cops put out this morning calling this FBI criminal investigation, not missing persons. I have not seen that. So that's interesting. If they change it to a criminal investigation, we need to know what they found with the autopsy, right? That will give us a good indication as to what's going on. So Born Again. There's no proof of a crime until they've found a dead body, but that doesn't mean Brian is guilty of anything yet. Please don't underestimate. People don't understand the importance of the Fourth Amendment. So that's right. And even though they found a body, it doesn't necessarily mean it's criminal, right? So we have to, it doesn't look good for him. The optics don't look good. And if you want to be above reproach, it's not looking great, right? If you don't want to even have the appearance of impropriety in these types of situations, he's not doing great at that, but that does not mean he's guilty. He is innocent wherever he sits, as he sits today, he's innocent. So some people saying law needs to change. A young girl doesn't come back. He doesn't talk and gets a lawyer. Nobody can contact her. So you think the Fifth Amendment should go away. See, that's from BS Detector. I can't ever agree with that. Especially, there are a lot of people in the country that don't trust certain cops or cops in general. Taking away the Fifth Amendment just creates so many more issues like that. So Sky Key thinks that she should have been arrested, but they let her go because she's a woman. So Merge Music and Film Had the attorney overstepped his mark? I don't know what you mean by that. Maybe you're talking about the press conference we talked about earlier. Do you think the attorney-client privilege is justified if the attorney possibly knew he committed the murder? Absolutely, attorney-client privilege is justified, and he cannot say anything about it if your client admits to you a murder or a crime that they have committed in the past. Now, if he came and said, I'm going to go murder Gabby, we have duties as the attorneys to try and protect that life and do what we can, even above and beyond the attorney-client privilege, to make sure that crime is not committed, or we could potentially be involved in that crime. But if it is a crime in the past, it is protected, and we'd be violating attorney-client privilege in providing that information. So we talked a lot about this in the last video. Media is civil. Should have kept an eye on him from afar at least. And they say it was because of resources and timing that they couldn't. Oh, so you're talking about the cop talking to the young girl about his ex-wife. Okay, Rory, that's what you're talking about. So Vicky, this is interesting. Do you think his parents are leading the police on a wild goose chase? No, I don't. I think they know how much media attention this has. I think they know that would end badly for them if they were sending him on a wild goose chase. But if they were and said that he was in this 24,000 acre national park or wherever he was, and he actually wasn't there, his parents gave him quite a head start, because it took days to go through there and they didn't find him yet. Paula thinks law enforcement didn't do anything wrong. And I think that's a fair point as well. They tried to, there's no way they could know what's going to happen, right? Hindsight's always 20/20. They tried to diffuse the situation. They tried not to arrest anybody. And they tried to do the right thing and separate them for the night. Because like somebody else put in the chat, if they would have put somebody in jail for 24 hours, they very likely would have just been right back together after that. So Jeff Arnold, why wasn't he under surveillance once he was a person of interest? They don't put all persons of interest under surveillance. There's nowhere near enough law enforcement agents or cops or time and money to, on every missing person, put 8-hour shifts 3 times a day, around the clock surveillance on every person of interest. It's just not feasible. So I see some questions repeated. Like I said, I'll get to as many as I can. So I've answered a couple that you guys are asking kind of in different ways. So Claire, is there anyone by law to make someone talk in the Fifth Amendment in any terms be overrided? No. Cannot override the Fifth Amendment. I mean, unless you're going to grant immunity and they're not going to go to jail for what they say, then potentially you could try to override it, because now they're not protecting themselves from self-incrimination because you've given them immunity. There's things you can do like that. But if somebody does not want to talk, it's near impossible to make them talk and violate the Fifth Amendment. So this is interesting. Sandcastle, yeah, she should have been arrested, not coached on what to say to avoid charges. The cop needs to be questioned about his treatment of them versus everyone else. That's interesting. So you think, based on the body cam footage and him saying stuff like, well, were you trying to hurt him? We don't know that he was shaking his head, but you think he was coaching her on what to say so that she wouldn't get arrested and he could just, separate them from the night and move on. Interesting. Thank you, Sky Keat, for subbing. If anybody else hadn't subscribed, please do. We love to continue the conversation, especially if you love getting in the chat and having questions answered and discussing this stuff. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, because that's what we're all about. Yes, Lisa, Gabby absolutely said she scratched him. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about the fact that she scratched him. So Invisible Miss X, could they have gotten a search warrant for Brian's parents' place because Gabby was living with them prior to her disappearance? Yeah, there's lots of different ways you can get a search warrant. And that could be one angle that they try to get in there, but search warrants have to be specific, right? So if they're trying to search the place to find where Gabby is, It's not a criminal search warrant where they're looking for murder weapons or his journal or his pictures or going through his phone or things like that. They're getting her clothes to smell, so the search dogs can smell, something like that. It's got to be connected to the reason for the search warrant. So Skykeet, arrest her or him. One of them should have gone to jail. That's usually what it is in most states. Somebody's got to get arrested, so you don't want cops showing up for domestic violence. Interesting, Vicky. They called a no-fly zone today on all media. Wonder what's happening. Maybe they're going to say what happened with, maybe they found something with the autopsy. So Vicky, why are they, can these get highlighted so they're easiest to see? Why are they calling him a suspect in the warrant and a person of interest on TV? So this is one of those interesting things that we talked about in some of the other videos, that all these different law enforcement agencies are involved. Sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, right? I also think that these legalese of suspect versus person of interest are very different depending on who you ask, right? But I haven't seen personally any like arrest warrants that they think they have enough to arrest him, right? So if they're trying to gather evidence on him as a suspect, then that means that they are zoning and honing in on him as a potential suspect in criminal charges that I haven't seen any evidence of yet. Oh, no question in this one. Yeah, Lisa, I agree with you. If she would have been arrested, she'd have been bonded out the next morning. I don't disagree with that. I agree. I don't think that necessarily would have solved the problem, and she would never, and she'd still be alive today if they would have done the right thing. I'm not saying that at all. Yeah, and a lot of people are saying that. Bear Dog saying the same thing. So Molly Mall, if the attorney knows the whereabouts of Brian, does he have to provide the FBI with his location? No, he does not. No, he does not. Yeah, Philip Bender, I never see people who want less rights. It is a scary, slippery slope. And I think people don't fully understand situations sometimes when they say things like this, and they really are trying to do what's best for Gabby. But we definitely do not want less rights, people. We want more rights. One of the reasons we did this channel was to talk about all the rights we have that some people don't even know about. Mr. Sport, never should the Constitution be changed. So Kiara Elisha, can the parents be charged if they happen to never find him? That's a real stretch. What criminal liability would they have? They weren't even in Wyoming where they found the body. So I don't think so. They would have to prove something again. If you're an accomplice, right, to a crime, the first person's got to be guilty of a crime, and they have to prove that that crime occurred with the person you were helping before you can be an accomplice to that crime. So I wouldn't see that happening, no. So Sky Key, does anyone know if they were carrying any weapons on them? I didn't see that, but I would guess no. That's something they usually would look for or ask about. And if they were, they wouldn't just, let them go back with each other. Yeah, Mitzer, you're not wrong. The search for this guy now is costing way more than the surveillance would have, but think about it. We can't, as a nation, pretend like this is the only missing persons case, right? So they can't just put surveillance on this guy in this missing persons case. If that's going to be police procedure, they're going to be putting officers on every person of interest in every missing persons case, which is way more than the resources spent on this one search. So born again, the police don't have the authority to do that. I'm not sure what you mean by do that, but their job is to make an arrest according to the law, not give their opinion and judgments on the street in these kinds of situations. So a lot of law enforcement officers do have some discretion And sometimes they use it way too much, right? And sometimes we've had clients who have gotten arrested. The law enforcement officer will explain what the charges are, what the potential penalties are, what they're going to have to do. And they're just totally wrong sometimes. They may know what the crime is, know if somebody's breaking the law, arrest them, but they don't necessarily know the entire process of what it takes to convict somebody of a crime. And sometimes they do give bad advice while trying to do the right thing. So, Media Isabel, surely some cases seem more obvious than others, where they can use some resources to track, etc. I just think this is how inequality happens for one way or the other, right? People are going to argue why they pick this case and not this case, whether it's socioeconomically driven, whether it's race driven, whether it's who you know driven, right? Whether it's, well, we can't do that in this state because we don't have as much resources as California or what it may be. So, to me, this, when we give more discretion in areas like this, where one case we're going to put more resource on, but not others, how would you feel if you were the one that they didn't put the resource in, if it was your child or your wife or your mom? I think that would hit home. So I think it's more proper to have the right procedures in place. And if we think as a nation the right procedure is to follow every person of interest, then more tax dollars going there, I guess. Sure, Denise, Gabby could have called her parents to get her out of jail, and then that could have changed everything. But the butterfly effect, we don't know what one thing could have changed everything else. It's true, Butterfly. Brian's parents can't necessarily make him do anything. He's an adult. All right, let's see what else we got. So Nicole Marie Polek, why aren't cops better trained at spotting psychological abuse and coercive control? This is hard, right? This stuff is not easy to spot. And I think a lot of people are self-proclaimed experts on this stuff, but I think it's really difficult I think they should be trained more. I think they are. I think they're getting more and more training on this type of issue because it's more prevalent now than ever. But I also think it's really hard, and we can't pretend that every cop's going to be an expert at everything and perfect at everything. They have a lot to learn. They have a lot to do and a lot to deal with. Their jobs are hard and they get harder every day. So I don't think we can expect them to also be psychologists and psychiatrists at the same time. But I think, it is important for them to focus on it. And I think that they are. So our Weems, I've heard both were on meds for mental health issues. If they were low on money and so far from home pharmacy, what are the implications of pharma withdrawal? So I have heard none of this. And the police board actually says neither one of them take medication for their mental health issues. Jennifer Hayes, thank you. So Olivia Lamb, do you find it odd how they declared the Moab murders of the two women unrelated before they even found Gabby's body? It is interesting, but we don't know what they know, right? So we try to talk through this stuff. We try to understand it. But I know, like, when we have a case, there's so much we know that the media will never know, that, law enforcement may never even know, like, especially the arresting officer. So much happens after the fact that they have no idea. So maybe they found something with those bodies or some other indications where they think they know what happened, or at least enough to rule out the connection with Gabby. I actually haven't seen that yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did do something like that. Kirsten Larson, new sub. Thank you. Anybody else who just subscribed during this video, let me know in the chat so I can put you up on the screen so we can see all of the new people joining our community to talk about these legal cases, talk about our legal rights, right? Because that's important. That's something we like to do on the channel. We've talked about a lot of them in this case, and they cross over in every case. That's what's so cool, right? Case happens, we talk about it. It's sad a lot of times, but we can all learn about it as a society, as people involved in this. We can learn what our rights are, what we think should change potentially, and a lot of us can affect the laws. If we vote for the judges, for the legislators, We vote for the law changes that happen in our states. We get involved with lawyers like me who write the rules a lot of times that are used in court, and have the ability to affect this stuff. I think it's important for us to talk about it. And like I always say, I like argument. I like differences of opinion. I like diversity of thought as long as it's respectful. And I want a lot of that in here. I like that. Jennifer Hayes, subscribe and set notifications to all. Yes, great idea. So Sandcastle, I get what you're saying. So yeah, so you think he was kind of coaching her what to say, and you think it's because she was a pretty white woman, I guess, and some people are agreeing with you on here. I mean, if you think that, then imagine if what somebody else commented, that certain cases, certain missing person cases get all the resources of law enforcement following persons of interest, but others don't. Some, what is it? I'm blanking here, but some leeway in making decisions, discretion. That's what I'm looking for. Some discretion is bad, right? Sometimes we can give too much discretion. Yeah, so Mace, I hate to say it, but I think even if they arrested her that day, it would have been the same outcome. And most cases end up like that. Like we have most domestic violence cases, they end up the victim being a witness for the defendant. So that's not unusual. So some people think the cop did a great job. So Mystery Maven, do you think Gabby's parents can file a civil suit against the state of Utah for not following the statute, abusing their discretion with the domestic violence aspect? It's a far stretch because she is the actual abuser in their police report. So if they would have followed their statute, they would have arrested her, right? So I don't know if that's what you're saying, like by arresting her, they would have solved this situation. But again, I don't think that that's a slam dunk, that just arresting her would have solved the situation. Rory, that's absolutely correct, especially here. Everyone has a right to their opinion as long as it's respectful. So most BMs, she should have been detained under mental health laws. Most states, there has to be proof that you are a risk of harm to yourself or someone else, and they both seem to agree that she wasn't. So I don't know. So Soundcastle, the cop didn't pay for the hotel room. It was through like a nonprofit that provides hotel rooms for domestic violence victims. That's what I think it is. Again, that we don't really have that in Florida, so I'm not positive. So Wandering Wanderer, no, even if he's guilty of murdering her, his parents are not necessarily going to be arrested. There has to be some connection to a crime that they committed. Just having him sleep there and leave there without telling the cops while he's not even a suspect, there's nothing criminal that I can see with that as far as right now goes. Brian Ditas, thoughts on the attorney canceling the presser? We kind of talked about this a little bit, but very surprising to me. And there has to be a reason. I gave my thoughts of what I think those two reasons may be. So WZG, no, it's not out of the books or out of the question right now. Peter, can Gabby's death still be considered an accident? Absolutely. I haven't seen them come back saying the body has shown that it's criminal, that it's murder, that it's some unforeseen or unexplained reason. I haven't seen that yet. So if they do come back, I mean, young people have heart attacks, young people fall, young people like a grizzly bear or whatever it may be. Somebody else mentioned. So I do think that it could still be an accident and not be criminal. I think I'm leaning towards it's probably going to be criminal, at least an investigation. But yes, there's still a possibility that there could be no criminal charges ever filed in this case. Yeah, Robert Lloyd, people are manipulated through their emotions. It's how propaganda and our media function. Good luck getting Americans to understand the fact or the dangers of a police state. Yeah, you do not want to give up with your rights. Even if you agree with whatever government may be in power at the time, because they're not always going to be in power. And once you start giving up your rights, it is hard to get them back. Okay, Sabrina saying they did not call a no-fly zone. I have no idea. Yeah, media, I agree. Copy was a very tough, thankless job. I agree 100%. Kathy, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. So the mystery maven, I don't know. I haven't looked into who the attorney is. Do you think the Laundrie's general practice attorney is appropriately representing them in this intense criminal matter, or would they be better served with a criminal defense attorney? I don't know the attorney at all. I haven't looked into what his experience is, but I would always advise if you have a criminal case, you need a criminal defense attorney. It's just like if you have a family law case, you need a family law attorney. If you get in a car accident or have a wrongful death case, you need a personal injury attorney. You need someone that does that area of law specifically. Thank you, WZG. Smash the like button. Butterfly, I agree. The cops gave both of them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, there was wrongful action that was reported from both of them, and they gave them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know. I don't necessarily think the cop dropped the ball. I'm surprised. It's unusual how this all went, but I don't think the cops are at fault for what happened to Gabby. I don't. Did I miss merge music and film super chat above? I must have missed it. I apologize. Somebody let me know what it is, and I will try to answer it. Alita Randolph, thank you for subscribing. So I don't know. The police report I just read said neither of them were on meds for it. Carol Sessoms, thank you for subscribing. It's fun. These lives are always fun because a bunch of people come in, we get a bunch of discussion in the chat, a bunch of new subscribers that can follow along. And make sure you follow our other videos too if you're interested in the other cases that we're doing, because it's a lot of fun and we learn a lot of different things from each other as we go through. I mean, this case is so different from the R. Kelly case, which is so different from the Elizabeth Holmes case, which is so different from the Britney Spears case. It's really interesting to talk through all these different kind of things that are going on in our country and our civil justice and criminal justice system. Isabel, thank you. Animal 333, not anytime soon, brother or sister. Thank you, Kirsten. So Ginger O'Gorman, this is a good question. Will he be in trouble once he's found, regardless of what comes about? I can't see the top of the screen right now. All right. Will he be in trouble once he is found, regardless of what comes about the death of Gabby, i.e. causing lots of time and money being used to find him? Okay, so good question. So regardless of what comes down as to whether this is a criminal, investigation, whether this is a murder, he cost everybody a lot of time and money. If he would have just come forward and said, I didn't do anything, I don't know where she is, or I know she's here, she got attacked by a bear, whatever, he could have saved a lot of time and money. But the short answer is no. You have a right to plead the fifth. You have a right to Do whatever you want when you're a free person, right? There's no arrest warrant out that I'm aware of. And, it is what it is at this point. So I don't see any criminal action right now with the details we have, even though it does seem like he's wasting a lot of time and money. Molly Mall. So some of the OG videos. Senior day in the life video of a lawyer a while back. Forgot to hit the sub button. I hit it today. Good. Lots of videos since then, my man. So I'm glad you're here. Michael, new listener. We look like twins. That's awesome. So why is law enforcement keeping all their tactics public? Like where they are searching, he could be listening. Good point. He could be listening. But if he connects to the internet, it's going to ping his phone. If he has his phone, I know there's been some dispute about whether he has a phone at all or whether he has one with him right now. So that's one reason. Also, I think the media and the public are actually helping with this case, as crazy as that sounds. And they're not keeping all of their tactics public. I can promise you that. Not all of them. Just enough to try to keep getting the tips and information. And the body cam footage is public record. So no, Shannon, in your experience, do you find that scratching is generally a defensive injury and not an instigating injury? I feel like most people don't attack by scratching. The issue with scratching is a large percentage of the time that a scratch occurs, it was not the intended result, right? So a lot of times a slap, a punch, something can turn into a scratch, whether it's from a ring, from fingernails, from a watch. So scratches come all sorts of ways. David T, new sub, thank you. Kelsey M, we don't know that he abandoned a corpse, right? We can't make too many assumptions. We can make our guesses and hypotheses, but we don't know that he abandoned a corpse. Right. Matt Mack, no listing as far as I've seen. All right. Vicky said in the super chat, Peter, they did call a no-fly from 11:45 to 7 p.m. WFLA reported it. They also said they had a gun for the just in case in the wilderness. Interesting. Yeah, might as well stay out of it if you can't be respectful. Agree with that. I have not. So that's something I haven't done, is a huge deep dive into her social media, but I have seen some timelines that other people have put together. Okay. So merge music. Sorry, I missed your super chat. Breaking news, autopsy confirms the body is Gabby Petito. The cause of death will take much longer. It's pretty much exactly what we thought. I don't think they would have informed her family if they weren't pretty sure it was her. All right, the mystery maven. I worked with their lawyer. He's a general practitioner lawyer, only does lower level criminal work. Interesting. Well, maybe he'll bring somebody else in. Maybe he'll bring somebody else into the process. A lot of times that happens. Claire, I'm Scottish and studying law in Scotland. I'm clued into your channel. It's great to explain the correct information to people instead of people listening to the media. Thank you for educating. Thank you for being here. And it's so much better with the interaction. I know I always say this because I learn a lot from you guys, how non-lawyers and non-law enforcement officers think about things is almost more important than how we think about it, because you are the jury of everyone's peers that are going to be making the ultimate decision in these cases. So I learn a lot. And I try to let you guys give you some insight and understanding about how this stuff works in the real world, what your rights are, what can and can't happen and should and shouldn't happen. I think it's a really fun dialogue personally. Mez M, thank you. Teresa Carter, first time. Thumbs up. Awesome. Make sure you subscribe as well. Wani Ferry. Okay, I just subbed. Hit the like button as well. Love your professional factual. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so Kirsten, look the attorney up. He specializes in DUI, white cooler, probably collar, and criminal defense. Okay, I mean, it sounds like a criminal defense lawyer. Again, I don't know who he is. I haven't really looked him up. I may know him since he's in Florida. I should look him up. We did some deep dives on the lawyers in the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case, which I haven't mentioned. We do a lot of videos on those as well. That's a crazy case too. I mean, to think all this stuff happens in our country for real and it's not a TV show or a movie is just insane, which is why we need laws and procedures and stuff in place so we know what to do and how to handle it. Yeah, white collar. I got you. Jeff, new sub from Canada. Awesome. Maribel, thank you. Watching for several months. Yeah, a bunch of you guys let me know that the body was confirmed to be Gabby's. $808. Baby girl. My first live and loving it, just subbed. Awesome. Jen A, just joining, new subscriber. Could you answer again what your thoughts are on the attorney canceling the press conference? I missed your thoughts on that. I really think that it's one of two things. Either the FBI asked him not to because he didn't want him to affect the way the public and the media are looking at the case because we actually may be doing something to help it and he doesn't want the press conference to hurt that. Or number two, they're working together and the FBI wants to work with him, doesn't want him to share certain information, and maybe the FBI is actually sharing information with that lawyer in return for him not doing a press conference. Those are just guesses. I don't know why it happened, but it's very interesting to me. Sylvia, your channel is akin to TV for smart people. Well, that's a testament to you all because most of what it is coming from your questions, content you guys want to hear about, and answering and dialogue with you guys. So kudos to you. I agree, Rory. Lawyers are going to have a field day with that police report on both sides. On both sides. Tons of stuff running through my head as I read that. What's interesting is so many police reports are never picked apart. But once, and I've got a lot of friends in law enforcement. I had one of my good buddies before he went to testify at trial in a criminal case. He's like, what are they going to do to me? What are the tricks? What do I need to look out for? We talked about it. And the cops that want to do well and care about their job and are really meticulous with their reporting do a good job every time. But if you never think you're going to be in this situation where a lawyer's picking you apart, sometimes holes can be there. You can get lazy or you cannot remember how important every fact and detail is. There's where Vicky told me about the no fly again. Matt Mack, absolutely. The autopsy may never be public, but we will hear things like it will be reported that it's a criminal investigation fully, that he's the suspect. They have a warrant out for his arrest. They're looking for a fugitive on the run, things like that. Mr. Jolly, I just subbed. What's going to happen if he is found? Is he just going to be brought back home? Or can he disappear again? So this is interesting, right? So it's going to depend on when he's found. If we have the autopsy back and they find out that it looks like a murder or some circumstances that don't seem right, and they're going to start a criminal investigation and he's a suspect and they have an arrest warrant for him and they have enough for enough probable cause, enough evidence where they think he may have done it, they can actually arrest him and hold him. And now we're taking some steps and some liberties, but I wouldn't think he'd be granted bail of any kind because he's showing he's a flight risk if in fact he did commit this crime. So they could arrest him and hold him in jail. Even if he's not talking, they can't force him to talk or answer questions, but they can arrest him and put him in jail. So that could happen. Terry, good question. I would guess federal at this point, since it seems like the FBI is kind of taking control of the investigation. So Aruna, that's the big question. If the 911 call said he slapped her, why didn't they press on that? So they're usually, David, are the police updated with conflicting 911 call information in real time? They're usually updated as to what the 911 call is, what they're reporting to, so they can know for their safety reasons. If a second or third 911 call comes in while they're doing their investigation and they're on scene, it may come through their radio. They may or may not hear it. So Mystery Maven, what's the potential criminal charges if he left her alive, alone, but with no supplies or protection? It can still be, manslaughter type, where if she like starved to death or something, where he had total disregard for her safety. They're abandonment type of things that there's all sorts of criminal charges he can be charged with if he really left her alone in the forest with no food, no way to charge her cell phone, no way to get help. So Girly Gamer, can the lawyer place him somewhere for his safety when there's not criminal charges? Do they have attorney-client privilege until attorney-client privilege lives forever, not just when charges are brought, and they do not have to tell the location? So Jenna, new sub, can you tell us your thoughts on abandoning the press conference? I've done it a couple times, so hopefully you've heard it. If not, this will post to YouTube right after. Alana, welcome. Just woke up. Well, just start from the beginning and catch up and post any questions you may have. Kirsten, nice legal jokes. Karen, watching from South Africa. That's awesome. So a lot of people have theories, which is interesting. Avelina, thank you for subscribing. Kirsten, exactly where you learned to deep dive. Jen A, yeah, we've done that. I may have hit that one already. No, so Jason, the cause of death, I haven't seen it yet, and nobody's posted it in the chat yet. So Jeff, I agree, man. I think that's the point. That's why this is so hard. And I hope you don't mean me, because I have not spent years making the police feel like they're too aggressive. But I do think there's a lot of pushback that police are too aggressive, and then when they're not aggressive enough, and now you can see how hard this fine line is. It's really hard. So Slick RX, yes, there are still some circumstances where he can be charged criminally if he left her, and environmental elements is why she died. Okay, I think I've done a lot of these already. So WCG, if they find Brian dead, I mean, if they think there's criminal activity there, that could be a criminal investigation, but we could just be left with a lot of unanswered questions. Shushu, why is the FBI handling this? What decides this? Multi-jurisdiction, things happening in multiple states. A lot of times the FBI will become involved and it'll become federal, especially if things happen across state lines. Certain states don't have statutes that can prosecute certain things, so the FBI will come and federal statutes can apply. There are a lot of parallels to like a federal murder versus a state murder charge. So World TV on the call question mark. Would the police not have heard that? They may not have heard the exact call, so we never know. The 911 could have reported it wrong. They could have reported it backwards or not said the male struck the female. We don't know, or I don't know right now what the 911 reporter told the cops. They just ruled in a homicide, Brian. I hope you're not messing with us. WFLA News, the case is a homicide per FBI. So people saying that autopsy came back saying it was Gabby, but not the cause of death yet, that just means we don't know the cause of death. But if it is a homicide and that's just been reported, that changes everything. And I'm guessing that that body, there is some indication of a homicide there. I appreciate you guys letting me know that in the chat. That's awesome. That's awesome that you let me know, not that it's a homicide. It's terrible that it's a homicide. Yes, Tracy. Good one. Took the words right out of my mouth. So, yep, Brendan, they ruled it a homicide. Fox News confirmed it's a homicide. Man. It's now a criminal investigation officially. Grace, don't worry about it. Thank you for the summary here if anybody wants to see it. Omar, they didn't arrest the parents because the parents aren't being investigated for any crimes yet. But now that it's a homicide, we'll see if they did anything to aid or abet him after the fact, right? You can be an accomplice after the fact. Even after the crime's committed, you could have nothing to do with the original crime. But if you're the getaway driver or hiding him or gave him money or flew him out or gave him a fake passport or something, then you can be an accessory after the fact. Yep. You guys are awesome. And you guys are on top of it. Multitasking. Invisible Miss X, with it officially being ruled a homicide, how complicated is Brian's defense with him being on the run? How might they argue this in a favorable light? I'm not sure what the favorable light could be. Yeah, I'm getting the initial designation for the manner of the death is a homicide. Yep. The cause of death remains pending. So, Ruth, question: if Gabby is found to have been murdered, it seems like it is a homicide, and Brian is found and remains silent, could he be convicted? Of course he could. How would they be able to prove someone else did it if he remains silent, right? People get convicted without any of their statements all the time. I think that police report and the body cam footage is a start for motive. I think it depends on what DNA they find on her. Now, they're going to find DNA under his DNA under her fingernails and all over her because they were together for months and in a relationship. But, you know, a lot of it's going to be circumstantial, it sounds like, but we'll see what they can find. Just because he remains silent does not mean he's not going to get convicted. Tyler Clayton, what happens if he turns up dead? Can't convict the dead guy. So, you know, we'll see. If they end up having evidence that it is him, they're not going to go and prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. It may just be to get closure for Gabby's family. But, yeah, it's going to be a, you know, sad situation. So L. Lee, wonder why saying homicide if maybe just buried remains, though maybe uncovered by critters, sorry, or some other cause. Could be that, or it could be they found that her head was bashed in, or that there were bruises around her neck, or that she was suffocated or something. You know, I mean, there's all sorts of ways it can be ruled homicide. So Omar, can they bug his parents' phone? I saw somebody else talking about bugging their or home. I saw somebody else say bugging their phone. They would have to get a search warrant for that. They have to have a warrant. You can't just be bugging people's phones. You have to have a reason to. Yeah, Lisa, police don't have 2020 hindsight any more than we do. So Matt Mack, I've kind of answered this a couple times. Only if the murder was going to be in the future, not in the past. So Barry Maddox, yeah. And then you have this issue. Are you violating people's constitutional rights if they're just a person of interest in a missing persons case and you start following them around everywhere? You know, is that unreasonable? Are you violating their constitutional rights? So there are all sorts of issues and reasons not to follow every witness or person of interest. So Invisible Miss X, now that it's officially a homicide, how difficult is it going to be defending him since he's on the run? How would you defend that? So again, if his defense is going to be somebody else killed her, we got in a fight, and once again I took her face and shoved it because she was scratching me or slapping me or punching me, just like what happened before, and there's a self-defense defense. Or if he said, I left her days ago, I don't know what happened to her. The fleeing can purely just be he was scared and he left. He saw that the nation was against him, protesters outside his house, everybody trashing him on social media. He got scared and he ran. That's how you defend the fleeing. All right. Yeah. Jordan Jacobs, the FBI could very easily already know the cause of death, and they're not going to share it. Wouldn't surprise me one bit. So, LV, a lot of people aren't going to like this, but we don't know what he told his lawyer, right? So he could have come back and said, I don't know what happened. I freaked out. I left. I would have told him to remain silent. I absolutely would have told him to invoke his Fifth Amendment right. But I mean, I don't know. You know, I don't know what I would have done. It really depends on what he would have told me. So, Angie, I have no idea if this is true, but to answer somebody else's question as to how they would know it was a homicide, if she had a bullet hole in her, that's pretty good indication. KG Hockey, some people are saying that, yeah, they are saying that the FBI is calling him a suspect now. WZG, thank you. I will always do my best to be objective. New Chris, what's up? You're here. They are moving mountains to find him now. Wow. Yeah, I agree with you. All right, we're getting close to the end here. Anybody else have questions? This was quite the live and chat with this new information coming. It's crazy, sad. Every day something seems to be happening, though, which you can see when the resources and law enforcement get together and try to get something done, what can actually happen. Yeah, LM Jack, we talked about this. Law enforcement said they knew where he was, but then they don't have a clue where he is. And the reason for that is the local cops just kind of took everyone's word for it. They thought they knew where he was. Turns out when the FBI came in, like, we actually have no clue where he is. He's gone. Ambitious gamer, could his lawyer argue because of the media coverage he could not get a fair trial? Correct. That could be an argument for a change of venue, but this is like nationwide. I mean, this is tough. This is tough. But yeah, he could absolutely. It wouldn't surprise me if that's going to be an argument made. Miss Trellam. I'm not even going to try. You should do a collab with It's a Crime Linda. I don't know who that is, but sure. Goddess Hather, self-defense maybe. However, he could have nipped it in the bud the first time he got pulled over. Yeah, but people don't really always nip it in the bud after 1, 2, 10, 20, 30 times. So, Kirsten, when this changed to homicide, how fast is the warrant issued? It depends on how quickly they can get evidence and get probable cause. Jenna, you keep asking if she was seen at the convenience store. I haven't answered because I don't know. I don't know if there's any truth to that. Aruna, thank you. Make sure you subscribe. Anybody that's not already subscribed, so you can stay in the loop with all these cases, get in the chats, and get your questions answered. Manny, I mean, could someone else have killed her? Certainly. I don't think we know. I don't think we know the answer yet. I think a lot of people feel strongly, and I think a lot of things indicate and point in a certain direction, but nothing has been proven beyond reasonable doubt yet. So as far as I'm concerned, he's presumed innocent until he's guilty, till proven guilty. Yeah, but a couple people have said, why did the police say human remains instead of her body? Again, that could be an indication of homicide as well. We just don't know. We don't know that yet. Ted flagged, do I think there'll be a civil suit based on the misconception of the 911 call? I do not. I kind of answered that before in a little more detail. All right. Let's see if we have anything else. So Nick R, they can't use evasiveness. They can't use the fact that you ran as probable cause, but it definitely factors into their equation onto how hard they're going to push and what they think of you, whether or not they can prove it yet. They being law enforcement. So Sky Keat, usually it would be in the state where the crime occurred. So Elizabeth, yes, they can have sealed warrants. Sylvia, thanks for joining us. I think we are about to sign off. 90 minutes in here. We're going to do more if stuff happens, which it seems like it is happening. I'll try to do more lives on this. Like I said, tomorrow, don't miss our Elizabeth Holmes trial update. Pete's going to be jumping on doing that, and he'll answer your questions in the comments. Then on Thursday, I'm going to do an R. Kelly live update. And in the meantime, if stuff happens, we may try to squeeze in another Gabby Petito update since everybody's been so involved on this. So I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you guys joining in on this. I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate all the subscribers. 85% of you aren't. So make sure if you're not subscribed now, go ahead and subscribe, like the video. This was fun, guys. Share the page with your friends. Tell other people about it. Hit up Linda. Tell her we need to collab on what it sounds like. So thanks for being with us. That's all we've got today, guys.